Well, first of all, I know what you were thinking when you first saw me, that I and Father Joe could be paternal twins. That's why I cut my beard off. In my days as a Benedictine monk before I entered formation with the diocese, the prime motto of St. Benedict was ora et labora, that is, pray and work, not vice versa. So in our gospel, it wasn't therefore a question of which of the two is more important between Mary and Martha. Work and prayer are both important. It is more a question of which of the two should come first. See, our gospel is telling us that it is a prayer that should come first so that our work will have the guidance and inspiration from God. There's an old quotation, and maybe you've heard this before. When a man works, it is only the man who works. But when a man prays, God works. In other words, spending time with God makes things possible, and then he makes our work fruitful. There's a story about two woodcutters. The first woodcutter works 8 hours a day. The second one works only for about 5 hours a day, and yet they are equal in the number of logs that they have cut. The first one asked the second one about his secret to productivity. And the second woodcutter said, "It is because I take time to rest and to recharge my body. And while I'm resting, I sharpen my axe." See, nowadays people have to be reminded of this lesson. Too many of us have the disease called STD. No, not the one you're thinking. STD, stress, tension, and depression. We work so hard in today's world to make ends meet, especially in the last couple years with everything that's been going on with COVID and everything that's going on in our world today with wars and insurrections and our political system here and everything like that. It causes us to have stress and tension, and at times we become depressed about where our life is going. We rush to meet deadlines in our world, to meet the train or a drive some here and there, to meet family obligations and everything else. And at the end of the day, we find ourselves exhausted, wasted, dull, and empty. And this happens every day of our years. When you think about it, some days it is just tiring. And we can't wait to go to bed. And then sometimes we really don't want to wake up because of what's waiting for us on the other end. And every year, many of us make a point to take a vacation, but what we find is that taking a vacation is sometimes seen as a luxury. It has become too expensive. We cannot even think of taking some time off from work. Worst of all, many of us say that we have no time to go to church to pray. We are just too busy. But the Lord is telling us, Martha, Martha, you are so worried and anxious about so many things. Relax. Come to me, and I will give you rest. You see, we need to come to Jesus to get some rest and then to sharpen the tools of our life that he gives us so that we can compete with the world out there for the next week. See, the sisters of Mary and Martha had their own ideas about serving the Lord. Martha went directly to the kitchen and hurriedly prepared food for her special guests. She was frantic and nervous because she was doing everything by herself and was running out of time. On the other hand, Mary was not concerned about the work in the kitchen. She sat down at the feet of Jesus and listened to his very word. See, Mary represents the active apostolate, while Mary, the contemplative apostolate. So it brings us to ask a question of ourselves. In our relationship with Jesus, are we more a listener or more of a doer? More like Martha or more like Mary? See, when Martha bragged in to complain that her sister was not helping her, Jesus gently reminded her, Martha, Martha, you are anxious and worried about many things. There is need of only one thing. Mary has chosen the better part, and it will not be taken from her. Now, Jesus wasn't regarding contemplative life as more important than the active life. Both are important, he says, in the life of a Christian. However, Jesus made sure that we set our priorities right. First things first. When asked about the greatest commandment, Jesus says, "You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your mind." That, he said, is the greatest and the first commandment. And then he says, the second is like it. You shall love your neighbor as yourself. In other words, God first, neighbor second. My friends, we come here today, and so we come here because we must work hard as Christians, especially in our world today. But first, we must find time to sit down at the feet of Jesus and listen to his words, just as you are doing this morning. You have come here to sit down to listen to Jesus, to speak to you, to pray to him. And so what we're doing is to be inspired by him, to be inspired by his Spirit, to be strengthened by his grace. And then when we do that, when we find time to spend time with our Lord in prayer, then our work in life becomes light. The fruits of our labors become sweet and abundant. Ora et labora. Pray and then work, not vice versa.